Life in both German and British trenches was fatiguing due to harsh weather, unsanitary conditions, and the mental strain of constantly being under the threat of attack. Conditions like cold weather and mud rising up the soldiers' waists led to many deaths. Soldiers would use buckets or pumps as an attempt to clear these trenches of water, but it always came back. With the combination of bad weather, trenches collapsing, and inconvenient methods of removing water and mud, the British trenches were often a swamp. An officer got fast up to his waist in mud one day and would keep digging up dead horses. Day-to-day life for British soldiers was very routine or boring, mixed in with fear from the enemy on the other side. Days consisted mainly of writing letters, eating, and sitting guard. Meals were very simple and rations were very hard for soldiers due to food never being fresh. Coupling that in with the very unsanitary trenches that these soldiers were living in, hygiene was very poor, leading to infestations like lice, mice, and trench foot. Combining all these different factors, along with the war and fear, it really tested these soldiers' physical as well as mental resilience.
Due to prolonged stalemates, many different strategies were used to try to overcome the enemy. These included layered defensive trenches and fast-moving troops that could swiftly move past heavily defended areas. Defensive layered trenches were used by both the German and British soldiers. These had trenches in the front, connected to trenches further back by shorter trenches, called communication trenches. They were built to make offensive advancement nearly impossible, as each side would slowly advance and take the first layer of trenches, only to have the defensive side take them back. No man's land is the space between trenches of opposing sides, and was often filled with mines and barbed wire. Braving no man's land left you open to machine gun fire as well.
Another aspect of trench warfare during the Battle of the Somme was the use of chlorine gas. Gas attacks were common, so they rehearsed what they needed to if gas was present. But even with rehearsals, casualties mounted from the use of gas. Sometimes there wasn't enough time to put one on before the effects were felt, and in some cases, the gas reached an almost absolute density, so that even the mask was useless, since there was literally no oxygen there to breathe. One German officer, when talking about ammunition, said, "The English bullets with their aluminum tips are pure dum-dums." Dum-dums were a specialized bullet used by both sides in World War I that was sometimes called the expanding bullet due to it expanding inside the body. Due to the inhumane deaths that would follow, these bullets were actually outlawed at the Hague Conventions about 20 years earlier, yet both sides still claimed that the other was using them. Artillery in World War I was the most destructive weapon available. It destroyed and transformed the landscape. In trench warfare, 75% of casualties were caused by artillery, due to the great distance that the shells could travel, as well as many of the shells containing poison gas or explosives. Overall, trench warfare in World War I is a testament to the horrors of war not only on the front lines, but in its entirety. Ultimately, nations need to practice diplomacy before resorting to violence. War should be the last resort. We need to attempt to reach diplomatic solutions to avoid the potential suffering of millions. In war, no one wins.